Hi, this is Matthew Cratter from Trader University, and today I want to talk about what sort of financial advice I would give my 18-year-old self. If you're interested in learning how the stock market works, what stock trading strategies actually work, and the way financial markets actually work, be sure to hit that subscribe button. So this is going to be a little bit unusual in that I'm going to give financial advice to myself as if I were 18 today. So back when I was 18, obviously, there was no internet or anything like that. And so I took a very traditional path. And I'm just going to go through that really, really quickly so you can kind of see where I'm coming from. Back when I was young, when I was in high school and college, the real way to get ahead, there weren't as many startups, wasn't as much entrepreneurialism, there weren't self-directed discount brokerage accounts, there wasn't crypto or Bitcoin. And so the only real path was to do really well in school and try to get a good job with that. And so this is the path that I went. I went to a very good private school in Seattle, the same one that Bill Gates and his kids went to. It's called Lakeside School. I was a really good student there. I was the top of my class. I graduated and went to Stanford, undergrad at Stanford, and I majored in I majored in music and English literature, believe it or not. I was a very good student. I also took a bunch of physics as well, but I ended up going on and doing a PhD in English literature at UC Berkeley. I spent about 8 years getting my PhD, and while I was doing it, I was able to get some grant money, and I used that to start trading. And so, as I was finishing up my dissertation, I was already beginning to make a lot of money in the stock market. These were the dot-com days. Internet stocks were going crazy, and I lived on the peninsula in the heart of Silicon Valley in the Bay Area. I started investing in tech startups as well. And so by the time I was 30, I was already a multi-millionaire doing this sort of it was somewhat traditional route, but I never got a job until after I already knew how to trade. I was friends with Peter Thiel when I was in college and graduate school. He was the co-founder of PayPal and the first outside investor in Facebook, a billionaire now, really smart guy and a friend of mine. And I went to work for him after he sold PayPal to eBay. He started a hedge fund called Clarion Capital, and I was already a pretty good trader at this point. So I went to work for him. So that's briefly my story. But my story is less relevant to you. I want you to know my background. But it's less relevant now because we have the internet, we have these global markets, and we have a way of exposing ourselves to them and distributing products, investing in financial assets all around the world. And so this traditional path, where it's sort of a transition time, where one's parents and grandparents will always say, you need to go to a good school, etc., I would suggest that things are a little bit different now. So here's my advice to myself. This isn't financial advice or investment advice. This is me talking more to myself. I have some teenage kids, and so at some point this may be useful to them as well. But I'll allow you to listen in. Some of the things I say may be somewhat controversial, so take them with a grain of salt, but also realize when things are obvious, they're already priced in and they're less useful. Telling someone just to go to college and enter a very competitive arena might not make sense anymore. It obviously makes sense if you want to become a doctor or a surgeon, a lawyer, something like this. But even if you want to go into business, I'm not sure that a degree in economics or a graduate school, an MBA, makes any sense whatsoever right now. So I would say that it's very important to not think that college is a magic pill. It doesn't solve things. Even getting into a really good school doesn't necessarily solve things, though it helps. And I would encourage you to always question what you're doing, question the track you're on. Going to college is not a substitute for hard thinking about the future. What are you good at? What do you like spending your time doing? And these are obviously difficult questions for an 18-year-old. But one way to answer this is to ask yourself, what would you do in your free time? Maybe if it's playing video games, you should think about software development or going to work for a video game company. So there's always, no matter what you enjoy doing in your free time, there's always some way to sort of parlay that into a career. College is weird because it's unclear what it is right now. Is it a consumption item? Is it just a four-year party? Is it an investment in your future? And if so, what is the cost-benefit analysis involved? how much are you willing to pay per year to invest in your future? Because it's not like investing in a stock or a house. It's a little bit more ephemeral. And if you don't make the right choices, you can end up spending a lot of money getting into a lot of debt. So it's not totally clear that's an investment, unless maybe you are going to become a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. Those fields will become much more competitive. And I would say that the pay has also gone down. If you're going to be a doctor, you have to deal with a lot of insurance issues. If you're going to be a lawyer, that's become a very competitive space. And my understanding is that salaries have gone down. But if you love the law, if you love helping people and want to help heal people, I certainly wouldn't discourage you. But college, you have to ask yourself, why are you going to college? Is it a party that your parents are paying for? Maybe that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. Is it an investment? Is it just an insurance policy against falling through the cracks? In which case you have to really think, if you're spending 40, 50K a year, that's a very expensive insurance policy. You can do a lot. You can do a lot with $200,000. You could start a business. You could buy a investment property, etc. And I would say that if you can't go to a top school, it may not make sense. And this is not to be snobbish or anything, but there are a lot of people who are just led into going to college and spending a lot of money. Maybe they don't major in a subject that makes any sense where they can have a return on their investment. And then the big problem is student debt. Student debt has served to inflate tuition because people feel like they're not really paying for it out of their pocket right now. And unfortunately, student debt, thanks to our evil American laws, is not dischargeable in bankruptcy. So you can file for bankruptcy. You're still going to have to pay back your student debt. The only way you can get out of it is to flee the United States. And I am speaking mostly to my American listeners, though if you're in Europe or Canada or Australia or somewhere else, you can see if it applies to your situation. But I mainly know about what it's like in the United States. If you do end up going to college, I would say completely avoid the humanities departments. I say this as a music major and English major. I was very lucky. My parents paid for all my schooling. I had some scholarships as well for graduate school. And so I ended up having no student debt, which gave me a lot of flexibility. But especially, I would say avoid all humanities departments. Maybe history would be the one exception, but definitely gender studies, sociology, anthropology, even my beloved English literature. These departments have completely changed. They're highly politicized, and they're not going to help you in the real world. They're not going to help you be a productive citizen. And in many cases, they're going to teach you ideas about the world that don't really work. Being able to deconstruct the patriarchy, I don't think it's a useful skill. I apologize if I'm insulting anyone, but I think it's completely insane to go take on a lot of student debt to major in one of these majors. I would also say don't waste your time studying economics. Everyone in economics departments at colleges are Keynesians. They all have tenure, or a lot of them have tenure. They don't know how the real world works. They think you can just print money, that money flows magically from the sugar daddy at the Fed or at the federal government. And so the kind of economics you study, it might make sense if you want to become an economics professor, which is also a very competitive track to be on. But I would not, economics, if you want to study it, go to YouTube, get a free education, go to free online schools. MIT has free courses, many schools. I think Stanford has free courses as well. If you are going to go to college and you are going to take on student debt, if you need to do that, major in something really useful, something that teaches you how to build things. Maybe an art department where you learn how to make beautiful things, sculptures, paintings, if that's your talent. If you can, I would say major in computer science, engineering, one of the hard sciences, and that's. But if you can do that, if you're in a position to do that, if you're good at math, if you're good at programming, you can also take cheaper online courses. There's a school in San Francisco, I think it's called the Lambda School. It's sort of a startup where they take a percentage of your future salary. So consider looking at something like that. You can also learn how to code just online. There are lots of online courses that are much cheaper than going to school. I mean, if you can go to Harvard or Stanford and get that on your resume, it probably makes sense. Though if you're really smart, if you're like a Bill Gates or a Mark Zuckerberg, you may find that college is just too slow and too impractical. So especially if you are a developer, if you have these skills, it might make more sense to just get started working right away. Go become an intern at a Silicon Valley company, start coding on your own, and just get started with your life. because you have the most energy when you're young. You're the most productive, and it's a shame. It's one thing if you want a 4-year party, that's fine, nothing wrong with it. But just be careful and make sure you know what's on the other side of it. If it's a lack of a job and a huge amount of student debt that can never be gotten rid of. Now, after college or skipping college, going straight to get a job, there are many companies now, Google, Tesla, they say you don't even need a college degree. And I think this is really where it's trending. If you can get a good job in a major metropolitan area, in the US, for example, it probably makes sense as a way of jump-starting your savings. But if you're going to do this, make sure that you are saving a lot of your income. This takes discipline. It's not as fun as spending all your money on maybe living in a nicer place and fancy meals and huge bar tabs every weekend. But if you can save something like 50 of your weekend, 50 or 60% of your income, and then start to invest that, you will not be a wage slave for your whole life. Consider, instead of renting an apartment, renting a couch, renting a bedroom, cooking a lot of your own meals, making big pots of stew, for example, and spending a couple $100s every weekend on binge drinking. Not good for your brain, not good for your savings account. So that would be one option if you have the ability to get a fairly high-paying job in a place like New York City, Denver, Chicago, Seattle, San Francisco, San Jose, etc. It might make sense, but these places also have very high housing costs, and so you have to figure out a way that not all of your income is just going into housing, and you're left with nothing else. The other option would be live very cheaply out in the countryside, in a small town, in a cheaper place, and start building an online business. Maybe you can work a day job, an hourly job, and then spend all your free time trying to scale up an online business, learning how to invest, learning how to trade. And as part of this, you should consider looking for states that have no state income tax, especially if you're not making a lot of money and you want to just be able to save as much after-tax money as you can. Consider states that don't have a state income tax, so you'll only be paying federal income taxes. So states that don't have a state income tax: Washington, Wyoming, Nevada, South Dakota, Florida, Alaska. Alaska's a little bit dark and cold. Texas makes a lot of sense simply because it's a little warmer weather, and the cost of housing, especially apart from the big metropolitan areas, is quite affordable. There's also Hawaii, which is very nice. There's a lot to be said for living in a warm climate. You can spend most of your time outside, and so you don't need a bigger area. You can just rent a room in someone's house near the beach, and that might be a really affordable way to do it. You can even buy a cheap RV or a tent or something like this, but it does make sense. You do have to deal with the internet connection question. And so I would say that the only things you really need, besides a roof over your head and food, get a good laptop, get a Mac if you can, get an iPhone. These are the tools of the modern world. And if you're doing anything online, you want to have powerful tools. And so it makes sense to live a little bit more cheaply and spend the money on these tools. Now here's the big key. And I wish my parents had taught me this. I don't think a lot of parents teach it. But you need to reach the point where you're no longer selling your time for money. The problem with selling your time for money is there's only 24 hours in a day. There are only 70, 80 years in a lifetime. This is our most limited commodity. So you need to reach the point where you're no longer exchanging your time for money. But you have investments, you have stocks, you have bonds, you have real estate, you have a trading account where your money is working for you. And you're getting paid, the proverbial thing, you're getting paid while you sleep. You're getting paid dividend payments, you're getting paid interest income or rental payments or something like that. So this is the reason to live cheaply and to save as much income as possible, especially when you're young, because then you can start to invest it. And the longer you can invest it for, the more it will compound. And even if something just goes up 10% a year, in those last years, let's say you start with $1,000, you're making 10% a year, it's just $100 a year. But when you're up to $1 million and you're making 10% a year, all of a sudden it's $100,000. And so if you can just keep that compounding going, the amount of money you make in your later years is and can be enormous. Warren Buffett's the perfect example of this, where he's making billions and billions of dollars a year. So you need to, this is why it's important to live frugally and start investing as early as you can. Now, I would say instead of going to college, or as part of going to college, it's really nice to be able to learn how to make things, how to make software, how to make apps, maybe how to build a website, how to, on the fine art side of things, maybe pottery, paintings, then obviously like graphic design, Kindle book covers. These things are really in demand these days. And I would also say that to the extent that you can, try to do things that scale. If you're just selling your time for money, that doesn't scale too well. You have to constantly keep upgrading your salary, maybe switching jobs, trying to get a raise, trying to get a higher bonus. If you can get a job as a salesperson where you get paid a commission, these sort of revenue sharing agreements are very good, because if you're good at what you're doing, if you're a good salesman, there's really no cap on how much money you can make. But also if you're building things in the real world that you can build once and then continue to sell, like Kindle books is a great example, software, you build it once, you maintain it, and you can continue to sell it. So try to do things that scale, and this gives you sort of operational leverage. Another idea for a living situation, this is when you have a certain amount of savings, is buy a duplex. A duplex is basically a house where you have two houses stuck together, two living units stuck together. So you've got the left side and the right side. You could live in one side and then rent out the other side and use this other side to help pay your mortgage or to just help pay your living expenses. So duplexes make a lot of sense. You can be a landlord and you can live there at the same time, and you can sort of keep an eye on your tenants. So that's and then as you reach a certain next level of financial independence, you can rent out the duplex side that you're living in and move to a bigger house. So that's something to consider as well once you're at a certain point. And you should try to get to the point where you're not renting anymore, where you actually have a place to live, where you're building up equity, and where you own some real estate. Real estate will do very well in the 2020s because of the devaluation of the dollar and all the money printing that's happening. I think I mentioned this already, but just to emphasize, this is the way you get rich is you have to spend a lot less than you make, at least at the beginning, and then you invest what's left over and allow it to compound over a series of years. When people say they want to become a millionaire, what they really mean, what they often mean is, I want to be able to spend $1 million and buy a nice car, a flashy car, and a flashy house. But becoming a millionaire actually doesn't mean that you're going to be spending $1 million. It means you're going to be not spending $1 million. If you spend it, you're not a millionaire. So you need to save it. This is sort of a cliche: spend less than you make. But the sooner you can put this into practice, the wealthier you will become, and the more flexibility you'll have, and you won't be at the mercy of your boss and your job and the economy, etc. So there are really two paths to growing wealth. Once we've assumed that you're saving money, you're saving a lot more money than you're spending. So path number one is, I call it collecting cash generating assets. And I use this as sort of an umbrella term for things that throw off cash. Now, we used to have bonds and savings accounts that paid some good cash interest income. They don't really exist anymore because interest rates are so low. But the best example of this would be dividend stocks, single family home rentals, the duplex, as we spoke about. And you really want to try to pay cash for your houses and your real estate to the extent you can. It will create an amount of discipline where you don't get yourself in a leveraged position and end up losing your real estate empire, which happens to people at all income levels, especially when there's a downturn. If you may need to get a mortgage. It's better if you just save up cash in the bank, maybe buy a much smaller house, and try not to use leverage when you're starting out. Single family home rentals are a great solution, where instead of you paying rent every month, you're the landlord and someone is paying you rent every month. I own a couple single family home rentals, and I can tell you it's a very nice, rather than dreading the first couple of days of the month, I always look forward to it and look forward to getting those checks. Now, the nice thing about cash generating assets, especially when you reach the point where you don't need to spend that cash flow on your living expenses, you can save it and use it to buy more cash generating assets. And then those new cash generating assets are going to throw off even more cash, and you can use them to buy even more cash generating assets. This is a little bit like the Warren Buffett, the Berkshire Hathaway model, where he has all these private companies and stocks, and they pay him dividends and earnings, and he uses that to buy more stocks and more businesses. So collecting cash generating assets, there's two ways to do it. One, you just buy them. You save up money, and then you invest every month, you dollar cost average into dividend stocks, or you save up enough money so you can buy a duplex, or maybe a small house that you rent out, or maybe you start by renting out a bedroom once things open back up, once COVID's done. The Airbnb is a certain way to go if you don't mind having people in your house, etc. But you can either buy a cash generating asset or you can build it. Ideally, you'll do both, and I do both. Examples of building something that throws off cash: Kindle books are a great example. A YouTube channel where you get paid. You start to monetize the channel and you get paid. This is a pretty long road. Both of these are long roads, but they're certainly quite doable. And you can see that those are the two things that I've done fairly late in life. To the extent you can build a following, whether it's on YouTube, Instagram, maybe a email newsletter, these can become cash generating assets. Having people who like and respect you, you can then build things for them, ask them what they want. And that's sort of what I've done with my website. I've created all these courses based on people's requests, and these become their own sort of cash generating assets. So you want to collect cash generating assets. You either want to buy them to the extent you have cash, or you want to build them. Building them makes a lot of sense when you don't have a lot of cash to start out with. And you want to build things that are fairly cheap to get started with. You don't want to buy a franchise or something like that where you're basically buying yourself a job. You want to build things like to write a Kindle book is extremely cheap. You pay a couple $100s for a cover. That's about it. Everything else is zeros and ones on the computer. And so these have a lot of embedded leverage. You can make so one of my books, for example, is the #1 bestseller in the stock market investing category. And if you can get to one of those levels, they kick off a lot of cash. So cash generating assets, you buy them or you build them. Path number 2 is less of a focus on cash generating assets, though it can be combined with cash generating assets. But you invest in things that don't necessarily pay you monthly or quarterly cash, but have the potential to go up a lot. This would include investing in startups as an angel investor. If you live in Silicon Valley and you have that you can develop that sort of network, for example. But even if you don't, you can invest in growth stocks. You can invest in the next Apple, the next Amazon, the next big biotech company, Bitcoin, physical gold. None of these pay any interest income or dividends, but to the extent that you can just buy them every month. You can check out my book on Learn to Trade Momentum Stocks. This will teach you how to invest and trade growth stocks. But to the extent that you can put your money in these and make 10x, make 100x, not really worry about collecting a dividend or a cash payment, but collecting long-term capital gains. You always want to let these compound for as long as you can. Bitcoin, for example, I'm not going to be selling my Bitcoin probably till 2028 or 2030. The longer you hold these things, the longer they can compound. And then at the end, if you've held them for more than a year, at least in the US, you pay the long-term capital gains tax, which is just 15 or 20%. It can be a little bit more if you're higher income because of the Obamacare tax. But we're talking buy and hold investments. You don't want to trade in and out too much, especially with something like Bitcoin. Growth stocks, you have to trade in and out a little bit more unless you can find the next Apple. But something like Bitcoin, physical gold, you just want to accumulate it. And you don't want to incur short-term capital gains taxes or fees. And to give you an example, you can go watch my other videos on Bitcoin. I'm not really going to go into it now, but I believe, and this isn't investment advice, this is what I believe is going to happen, though I think it's quite probable. $100 invested in Bitcoin today is going to be worth $10,000 in 5 years, probably more than that. It's going to go up more than 100x, probably more like 200 or 300x. So even the bar tab from a night of drinking, just $100, you're talking about becoming worth real money, $10,000 in a few years from now. And so as part of this, I would encourage you to learn how the financial markets work. If you're not scared of things like deflation and inflation, if you understand how bonds work, how stocks work, how the economy works. So for example, when we enter a liquidity crisis like we've been in because of COVID, if you know how the financial markets work, how the economic cycles work, you will be much smarter than the average person. And you'll be able to position yourself so that you don't get blown up when a housing bubble implodes or when you get a big bear market in stocks. And you can begin to see the warning signs on the horizon. Subscribers of my YouTube channel know that I warned everyone about 2020, what was going to happen, and this was because I saw what was happening with the yield curve late in 2019. And so the knowledge really, it's a cliche, but knowledge really is power here. We live in a financialized economy, and you need to understand how finance works, how Bitcoin works, how growth stocks work, how the Federal Reserve works. So there are a couple ways you can get up to speed on this. And I'm going to suggest two very low-cost ways. The first way will be my YouTube channel. You can go to this page. You can see all my videos here. And you just work your way through them. Some of them are a little bit longer. Some are very short. If you watch all these videos or watch a bunch of them, you will know much, much more than the average person. And at first, the terminology may be a little bit foreign, and you won't understand what I'm talking about. But it's like anything else. It's like learning a new kind of music. You just start listening to it. You start Googling terms that you don't understand. Maybe you don't know what deflation is, so you just Google that and you go down the rabbit hole. But this would be a really free way to get a very good education in the financial markets. I've got probably a couple hundred videos at this point. Go watch all of them and you'll get really smart. So that would be the free way. The next least expensive way, check out my books, especially Beginner's Guide to the Stock Market. All my books are only $2.99. So you can buy all, 14 or 15 of them for just 30 or 40 bucks. And especially if you just get the Kindle version. Dividend Investing Made Easy is a great place to start if you want to learn about cash generating assets. Bear market trading strategies is good right now. If you want to learn about growth stocks, I would say learn to trade momentum stocks is a good place to be. But these, for just an investment of not too much money, you can really take yourself to the next level, especially combined with the YouTube videos. And then once you've done all that, and maybe you've made a little bit of money, you have money to spend, you should try to be very frugal up front. But then when you maybe have a little bit of cash in the bank, you can check out my paid online courses. But I would encourage you to definitely do the free and the very cheap versions first. And then you can go to the paid courses. I offer unlimited access to all my courses for just $125 a month. But I'm going to give you a coupon because we are in a recession right now. I want to make it cheaper for you, especially if you're one of my younger listeners. But these courses, you can go, I'll stick a link in the description notes below. You can click on any of them and see the curriculum. Learn to Trade Stocks Like a Pro is really the flagship course. I have courses on swing trading with options, advanced options trading strategies, bear market trading strategies, crypto and Bitcoin, futures, financial statement analysis if you want to be able to learn how to read financial statements like Warren Buffett and really dig down into the language of investing, vol trading, real estate investing. This would be a good one if you want to get a better idea of how I think about real estate. So this would be the next step. And so if this is something that interests you, you can click on these, check out the curriculum, see the list of lectures, and then just scroll down here and you click Get It Now. It will take you to the checkout page. As I said, normally access is just $125 for 30 days access. But I'm going to give you a coupon code, and you just click right here where it says coupon code, type in YT as in YouTube, 99, click update, and that'll take $26 off. So you can get access to all these courses, all 13 courses, for just $99 for the first 30 days. No long-term contracts or anything, so you can cancel right away. And you can watch all the courses, take notes, and then cancel, and you will have gotten an incredible education for just $99. Or you can stay, as you begin to make more and more money, it makes sense to invest in your continuing education. So I'm definitely not against education. I'm just against very expensive education where you're paying tens of thousands of dollars a year. But I would encourage you to check out my online courses. Obviously lots of other online courses about the financial markets and learning how to trade and how to invest. And so be sure to check out those too. And for the price of a college education, you can take all these online courses for just a fraction of that. So check this out. I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions, if anything I said didn't make any sense, or you want me to clarify or elaborate, please drop a comment in the section below and I'll answer your question. And hit that subscribe and like button if you found this useful. And for all of you who are 18 or early 20s, hopefully you found this video helpful and you can really use it to sort of plan out your life a couple decades in advance and start compounding your wealth, start saving and investing and learning how to get your money working for you so that you won't be at the mercy of the economy or your employer for the rest of your life. These are some lessons that I wish I had known when I was 18. It took me many, many years to figure them all out, and I'm obviously still figuring some of this out day by day. Thanks a lot for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.